If you threw prime Bruce Lee straight into today's no-holds-barred MMA cage, could he even survive the first round? Just this hypothetical question alone has kept the internet arguing for 50 straight years. Some claim he'd be crushed like a bug by modern fighting systems, while others are absolutely convinced he'd leave his opponent completely incapacitated within 3 seconds. When cinematic myth collides with the cold, hard steel of reality, who actually gets terminated? Since a physical showdown is forever impossible, this virtual octagon has been moved directly into cyberspace. Open any MMA forum, and you'll find 2 camps hurling stats at each other through the screen. One side calls him the father of MMA, while the other dismisses him as just a guy who made movies. When UFC President Dana White was asked this question, he was blunt. It's completely unfair. I'm a huge Bruce Lee fan. Without him, there would be no mixed martial arts today. But at the exact same time, former UFC heavyweight Brendan Schaub publicly called Bruce Lee a fake. The corporate bosses and promoters put him on a pedestal, while active heavy hitters think he's totally overrated. Between the top executives and frontline fighters, who's actually lying? Today, we're dropping the nostalgia and just looking at the facts. We all know Bruce Lee has no officially sanctioned professional fight record. This is the root of all the controversy. But no pro record absolutely does not mean no real combat experience. Researcher and enthusiast John Little tracked down over 30 eyewitnesses, reconstructing Lee's countless closed-door sparring matches on the streets of Hong Kong, in Seattle dojos, and Oakland gyms. In all these accounts, Bruce Lee was never defeated. So, who exactly did he fight? 1,958. A 1-7-year. Old Bruce Lee knocked out 3-time champion British boxer Gary Elms in the 3rd round of the Hong Kong Inter-School Amateur Boxing Championship. 1,959. A street fight on a Hong Kong rooftop. His opponent sneak attacked and injured him, but Lee immediately countered and severely beat him until the police arrived. 1,962. A Seattle YMCA handball court. No rules. His opponent was a Japanese karate black belt wearing a gi. Lee was in street clothes and took off his shoes before stepping up. The timekeeper's official data, 11 seconds. In those 11 seconds, Lee threw about 15 punches and 1 kick. Bystanders were utterly shocked by his extreme destructive power. And then there's Oakland, 1,964, his closed-door match with Wong Jack Man. It remains the most famous and fiercely debated real fight of his entire life. It started because the Chinese martial arts community in San Francisco was furious that Lee was teaching kung fu to non-Chinese students. A 24-year-old Bruce Lee faced the 23-year-old Wong Jack Man, a master of Xingyi, Northern Shaolin, and Tai Chi. The stakes were simple. If Lee lost, he had to shut down his martial arts school. It was a black box duel, no referees, no cameras, completely sealed off from the outside world. No one knows for sure what happened behind those closed doors. When the fight ended, and the public tried to piece together what actually went down, the accounts were completely split, leaving the truth buried in a heavy fog. His wife, Linda, claimed the fight lasted only 3 minutes, with Lee completely dominating his opponent. But the version circulating among the Chinese martial arts circle was that they engaged in a grueling 20-minute dogfight with no clear winner. Who's telling the truth? Since neither side left a detailed public record, the exact details are lost to history. But there is one undeniable fact. After this fight, Bruce Lee sank into deep frustration. He realized that when an opponent refused to engage head-on and started running circles around the room, traditional Wing Chun couldn't effectively chase them down. Trying to land heavy blows to the back of his opponent's head and spine not only drained his stamina, but his fists also swelled up severely from punching hardball. Following this bout, Bruce Lee completely abandoned traditional routines and created Jeet Kune Do. If he had really won that easily, he absolutely wouldn't have put himself through such a painful self-revolution, right? As for another loss that his haters love to bring up, It happened on the set of The Green Hornet. Rather than calling it a fight, it was more like a real-world collision of modern MMA concepts back in the 60s. Bruce Lee was young and aggressive back then. He moved incredibly fast and hit extremely hard during filming, often leaving Hollywood stuntmen battered and bruised. To take him down a peg, the crew brought in a 200+ pound judo and wrestling dual champion Gene LeBell. In one encounter, LeBell didn't try to trade punches. Instead, he used his massive size advantage to catch Lee from behind in a chokehold, hoist him up like a sandbag, and ran around the set. For a top-tier striker, the moment your feet leave the ground, all your explosive power drops to zero. Fundamentally, this was a sneak attack submission with a massive weight disparity, not a fair fight. Haters often point to this as hard proof that Bruce Lee couldn't fight, but they ignore the most stunning aftermath, which highlights exactly what made Lee so great. Any other arrogant martial artist would have held a massive grudge after such a humiliating public defeat. But Lee's choice? He immediately let go of all his ego and star power. He deeply realized he had a fatal blind spot in takedown defense and ground grappling. So, he took the initiative to make peace with LeBell, swallowed his pride, and spent an entire year intensely learning judo and ground submissions from the very guy who had just humiliated him. A true champion isn't some invincible, artificially created god. A true champion is someone who can take a loss and turn their opponent's weapons into their own. In an era long before smartphones, the only verified footage of him in a real fight is a brief sparring clip of him wearing protective gear at the 1967 Long Beach International Karate Championships. So, supporters and haters are forever talking past each other. One side says, just look at his speed and philosophy, while the other counters, if you don't have tape, your argument is invalid. The core of this divide is the clash between his identities as a movie star and a martial artist. On screen, he's a Superman who shattered the sick man of Asia sign with a single kick, but modern combat fans only respect weight classes, a solid chin, and ground and pound. When the Superman meets modern materialism, a massive cognitive dissonance is born. So, is there anyone who could beat him? The brutal truth is, yes, plenty of people. Bruce Lee usually walked around between 130 and 140 pounds, which means today he'd be fighting at bantamweight or featherweight. If you put him against a 250-pound heavyweight, the absolute crushing pressure of that weight difference would be like an 18-wheeler running over a bicycle. Honestly, Lee himself was more self-aware than anyone. Someone once asked him if he could beat Muhammad Ali in a fight, and he laughed, saying he'd easily kill me. But when pressed further, he coldly added, but if it were on the street, I'd make sure he never got up. Notice, he didn't say, I'll trade punches with him. He said, make sure he never got up. Most people might hear that and think he was bluffing, but if you actually crack open his Tao of Jeet Kune Do, you'll realize it's not a rulebook for scoring points in a ring. It is an instruction manual on how to completely dismantle an opponent in seconds. His core tactic was always unrestricted, vital point strikes. He sought to end the fight in the most extreme, definitive way possible, and then get out safely. In a no-rules scenario, his terrifying explosive power, combined with extreme instincts forged in real combat, would make him anyone's worst nightmare. Just as Mike Tyson bluntly put it, Bruce Lee was a martial artist, but he was also a street fighter. He liked to fight for real, no drama. Capable of winning does not equal proven to have won. Bruce Lee's sudden death at 32 was the greatest tragedy in sports history, but it also created the most perfect closed loop in fighting lore. He took his unverified peak martial arts skills with him, forever frozen on the border between myth and reality. In 2024, UFC champion John Bones Jones finished his opponent with a spinning back kick. In the post-fight interview, he quoted Bruce Lee, I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times. A modern Apex champion using a 50-year-old Bruce Lee quote to explain his own victory. Georges St. Pierre, Conor McGregor, Anderson Silva, all these names at the very top of the pyramid have acknowledged Bruce Lee's massive influence. Under the laws of physics inside the octagon, he would be limited by his weight in modern systems, but in the ultimate survival philosophy of the streets, he remains that untestable phantom. Perhaps it is exactly this endless, unanswered question that elevated him beyond a mere fighter, turning him into a cultural icon that transcends eras. So, what do you think? If prime Bruce Lee stepped onto the streets today, who do you think could take him down?